Get ready, because today we're going to talk about the drafting process and what you should be accomplishing with each draft of your story. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Entry Wounds, and welcome to my writing channel. One of my subscribers requested a video on the topic of drafting a novel. Not just writing that first draft, but specifically how to jump from one draft to another until you get to that final draft at the very end of the process. Now, for different writers, they may take more drafts than others. For instance, Stephen King has no trouble just writing a first draft and then polishing it up and sending it off, and then that's it for him. But for the rest of us, we may take 2 or 3 or 4 or 200 plus drafts to get to that final draft, to get it to where we want it. And that's what I want to discuss today. I want to discuss what exactly you should be accomplishing during each draft, what kind of questions you should ask yourself after completing each draft, and finally, how to get the most out of the process. Now, the first thing you can start with in terms of the drafting process is what's called the zero draft. This is optional. You don't have to do it, but what a zero draft is, it's basically a baby draft or a test run that you can use in order to explore the key elements of your story. You're essentially going to be writing a very, very short version of the story you have in mind. So if you envision yourself writing like a 300-page story, you might instead write a 10 or 20 or 30-page story and just include the key elements here. Just focus on the key elements like the main plot, the main characters, the conflict between the hero and villain, whatever it is, and just write it out as fast as you can. See how it works on like a small scale. See all the strengths and weaknesses that are going on, and this can save you a lot of time in terms of like planning things out down the line. Now, if you do write a zero draft, the goal here is to give yourself a basic blueprint or game plan to work with as you approach that first draft. And some questions you might ask yourself after writing the zero draft. Do I have the key pieces I need to write a full-length novel or screenplay or whatever it is you're writing? Are my main characters dynamic and relatable enough to engage an audience for several hundred pages? Can the main conflict sustain the entire story? And then finally, am I prepared enough to write this story? With some stories, you can simply jump right in. Other stories may require specific research or pre-writing before you can honestly start the first draft. And then the next thing you're going to do after you finish your zero draft, you're going to do any necessary pre-writing before you move on to the first draft. And the first draft is the discovery draft. This is where you take risks, you have fun, you let the story rip. You're going to start at the beginning, you're going to tell the story until the very end. You're going to let your characters surprise you. You're going to let the story go off in all kinds of different directions. You're not going to worry about the consequences. You're not going to worry about getting anything perfect right now, because this is, again, it's the discovery draft. This is where you take risks, you take chances, you let the story unfold in all kinds of different directions. And it's important that you push yourself to finish this draft. There's going to be times where you doubt yourself, or you hit a roadblock, or you wonder if it's even worth finishing, but trust me, push yourself to finish it, even if it means skipping parts of the story or glazing over those parts. Whatever it takes to get to the end, try and reach that ending, because a lot of times when you do reach that ending, the rest of the story comes into focus for you. But the ultimate goal here with this first draft is to have fun, gather plenty of great material, and figure out the basic structure of the story. And some questions to ask yourself after the first draft. Do I have too many characters? Can I cut or combine any of these characters in order to tighten the story? Does the basic plot make logical sense? Doesn't have to be perfect, but does it make logical sense? Are the stakes consistently raised throughout the story? Are the subplots necessary? Do they support the plot and its characters? And then finally, is the world building both engaging and believable? Think about things like geography, weather conditions, political and economic systems, distribution of resources, etc. All those things. Think about how your characters respond within this world. The next step after your first draft, what you want to do, you want to address your story's biggest weaknesses. Figure out where your story fell apart during that first draft. What were the areas where maybe you rushed through because you didn't know what to do, or maybe they were just rough spots that you need to smooth over, or maybe they were complete plot holes along the way. Whatever it is, figure out where you need to make changes and start brainstorming those changes. Figure out your plan of attack for the next draft. And this is where the second draft comes. The second draft is what I call the rewrite draft. And this means that you're going to rewrite the entire story from start to finish. And And yes, I know this sounds like a lot of work. I know you don't want to do a lot of work, but rewriting the story is going to solve problems faster than if you just take that first draft and you try to revise it and try to, puzzle things out from there. It's not worth the effort. It's a lot easier to just start with a brand new draft. You know where the story is going, and you also know your plan of attack. You know what kind of changes you're going to make. So tell the story again from start to finish. It's going to be a lot better this second time around. And your goal here is to address the weaknesses of the first draft while still taking risks if an opportunity arises. If you're writing and something cool pops up and you think, maybe I'll chase this down, see where it goes, go for it. You also want this to be a readable draft, something that you can fix up and send to your beta readers for feedback. Now, some questions to ask after your second draft: which characters need more development? What major structural issues need to be addressed? Does the story contain a beginning, middle, and end? Does any section feel rushed or dragged out? What kind of structural issues do you need to address here? Then ask, are my story events arranged in a way that creates enough mystery, suspense, or tension to keep the audience engaged? And then finally, you can ask, which scenes are boring? Can you cut those scenes? Can you revise them so that they engage the audience better? Maybe include some action, humor, or character development to spice up a dull scene. The next step, after you finish your second draft, what you want to do, you want to make any necessary revisions and edits, and then now is the time to send your story out to beta readers for feedback. Reach out to your friends, say you have a completed story, completed novel, you want to get their input on it, you want some honest feedback. And this brings us to the next stage, which is the third draft and beyond. And these are what I call the cleanup drafts. Basically, you're going to take the feedback that you get from your beta readers and use that to clean up whatever problems are going on in your story. And different beta readers will give you different types of feedback. Some might point to like bigger picture issues, others might point to like medium-sized issues. If you notice that several different beta readers are all pointing to a single issue, you probably need to fix that. That's something you probably want to address. And at this stage of the story, when you're working on the third draft, you may, depending on the state of your story, you may have to do some extensive rewrites, some extensive revisions, some extensive editing in order to get the story where you want it to be. And this may require you to go through different drafts, maybe send them to newer beta readers, get more feedback on it. It's an ongoing process. And keep in mind that the process for every writer and every story will be different. With Stephen King, he says that he usually writes one draft, he polishes it, and he's done. Meanwhile, someone like Patrick Rothfuss, who wrote Name of the Wind, he said that he used 200 plus drafts over the course of 14 years to get the story where he wanted it to be. And with every story being different, I can tell you with the 3 books that I've released, they were completely different in the amount of revisions that they took. Bad Parts took about 7 or 8 drafts, and 3 of those were complete rewrites. Meanwhile, Entry Wounds was a complete walk in the park by comparison. It only took 3 drafts, and 1 of those was a complete rewrite. And then after that, I thought, oh, everything's going to be easy from now on, but that wasn't the case. The Half Murders took 6 drafts, and 2 of those were full rewrites. So it's going to vary from story to story. But the goal here with the third draft and beyond, you want to create a well-constructed, readable, enjoyable story that has no significant issues. And some questions to ask after the third draft and beyond: ask yourself, are there any major issues that leap out? Is there a weak section of the story that I can improve? Also ask yourself, do characters act realistically? Meaning, do they act according to their motivations? Does every scene serve a meaningful purpose? Do plot events flow with energy and clarity? Does the story deliver the appropriate amount of emotional impact from start to finish? The next step, after you get your story where you want it, you want to make final revisions and edits, and then send it to your last round of beta readers. Hopefully this group of people, hopefully they only find small issues with your story, little things that you can fix, because now you're going to be at the final draft. And this is the completed draft, the polished draft, and right here you're only going to make small scale changes, maybe like revising a scene or editing a dialogue exchange, fixing your sentences, moving commas around, stuff like that. And one thing I'd highly recommend doing at this stage, read your entire story out loud so that you can hear how the sentences sound. This can make a huge difference in helping you see where you need to restructure your sentences, polish things up, fix your word choice, and things like that. The goal here is to fine-tune the story before you send it off to an agent or editor. You'll know that it's ready when most of the changes you make are just sentence level tweaks, things like moving commas around, changing words here and there, restructuring sentences, all that fine-tuning kind of stuff. Some questions to ask after your final draft: Are there any last minute changes I can make to improve the story? Are there any last minute cuts I can make to tighten the story? Is the sentence level writing strong enough to maintain a reader's interest? Do I overuse any words or phrases that could distract the reader? And finally, does the story read smoothly when I read it out loud? By the way, if you want a complete list of all the questions from today's video, as well as some bonus ones, I will make a PDF available to my Patreon subscribers, as well as to my YouTube channel members. I'll link to both of these in the description below. Question of the day: what's the highest number of drafts you've done for a single story? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of any one of my books and be sure to leave reviews on Amazon. Entry Wounds is great if you like thrillers. It's about a guy who picks up a haunted gun and he can't put it down till he kills 6 people with it. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check out my other videos. Maybe hit that thanks button for me. And as always, remember to keep on writing.